had a guest on, and I was trying to put together my PTCS bronze tournament team. And this is a person I've seen in a lot of different chats, giving a lot of people different advice. And he was willing to come on the show about a week and a half ago and said I'd have him back to talk a little bit more about tournament strategy. So without further ado, let's bring back Mr. Black.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly, just jamming away.
All right, outstanding.
So, how's your Monday going, Mr. Black?
Well, hopefully it's going better than my Sunday. I had to watch more Padres disasters. Now, I'm rocking the 98 Trevor Hoffman today. Hopefully it will turn around, but I think we're already getting to the point where we have to start thinking about next year.
Yes, you always at least have that hope of next year. And Tessaouija is saying solid jersey selection there. So Trevor Hoffman, one of the best relievers in Padres history. I didn't ask you last time, which one or two players were your idols growing up, in either on the Padres or just in baseball in general?
Well, you can't be a baseball fan in San Diego in my era and not know who Tony Gwynn is. Yes. My favorite Tony Gwynn fact is that he still is the all-time leader in basketball assists for San Diego State University.
One more time. Repeat that one more time.
Tony Gwynn was a multi-sport star in college, and he still is the all-time leader in basketball assists at San Diego State University.
Wow. All right. And
he thought he was a better point guard than he was an outfielder, but he wasn't that tall. He figured he had a better chance in Major League Baseball than the NBA for that reason. It looks like it worked out for him, though.
Yeah, I would say he made the right selection. So Gwynn would be one, and maybe give us a picture. I know you got the Hoffman jersey, but
I was so excited when this season I won a weekly tournament in the first week, and I got 1998 Kevin Brown. Yeah, that guy struck out everybody. It was awesome, and I had the card. I was so excited. And then we figured out how P. Babick works, and I'm now less excited about the 100 overall Kevin Brown card. But I still have it, though, so that's nice.
Well, we both know that last year's Kevin Brown was a pretty good stud for a long period in the game, wasn't he?
Yeah, he did. He played for a long time in a lot of categories because he was the build lineup guy for right-handed pitchers. Gold Kevin Brown played, I think, all the way through October, I think.
Yes. Yeah, the gold Kevin Brown and eventually the perfect Kevin Brown.
Perfect Brown, too, was good, too. Yeah.
Yeah. So those of you that played OOTP24, Kevin Brown definitely is a card that probably crossed your path this year. In OOTP24, I know there's not a lot of the big Padre names really in the game yet. Are there any currently in the game that kind of excite you for Padres?
Padres in the game. Well, I hate to say this, but most recently, the most Padre I've had to identify the most with, unfortunately, is Austin Hedges. He has no bat, but he's a catcher with catcher ability. He's currently with the Guardians, I think, but you can never get away from him. You never stop seeing him. 40 overall, someone's going to play him somewhere. And what's worse is, remember, he can't hit. But if you're watching a highlight and he's up to bat, something horrible is about to happen to you, because otherwise he'd never get a highlight.
Good point. I never thought of that. They don't show highlights just of random things, right?
Exactly. So here I am minding my own business. I'm pitching and Austin Hedges is up with 2 on. Oh, God. Oh, no. Yeah.
Yeah. Either it's, he gets beamed or he gets a home run. It's likely one of those two things. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, Austin Hedges as well last year and the year before was that low-level catcher that you wanted on your team, I think, in bronze, because he had that high catcher ability. This year, not so much. They didn't really give him that high catcher ability, but he's a player, too, that has been on a lot of teams.
Jeff Mathis has, for the most part, crowded him out. However, at 40 overall, he's still free in caps. As D. Dempsey says, he's still going to show up on cap tournaments rosters for that reason. Although, before I forget, a Padre that I'm actually interested in for a positive reason is the new baseball reference to Randy Jones. He's still our only Cy Young winner, and he got the shape right. No stuff. He never threw a fastball, but his breaking stuff was great. So high BABIP, high HR rate, high control. It's unfortunately 89. It's not a perfect number, but that's okay. I'll find a spot for him somewhere.
And as Mr. Audit says, the bronze Gwyn is exciting, but we know there's going to be a perfect one. I just hope it's not an LE10 because
me too, and I hope they don't disappoint me. I need an anti-K's rating of at least 207. It's Tony Gwynn. He doesn't strike out. What do you expect? He doesn't have to be good anywhere else. Something like contact 80, 110, BABIP 105, anti-K's 212, power 40. That's fine. That makes sense.
What about defense? How was he as a defender?
In his earliest career, he actually wasn't good at all. Even though he had the speed to play center field, he really didn't do much. But he worked at it, and he was able to earn some gold gloves later in his career, most notably when he was in right field after he moved out of center. So he did get a reputation as a good fielder, mainly out of work because he didn't start with it. He didn't really have much talent for tracking the ball. Of course, these days now we have Fernando Tatis Jr. out there. As a shortstop, he was more fun than a barrel of monkeys, but you never knew what you were going to get. As a right fielder, he has been excellent so far. Great range, great arm. He's already one of the top fielders in the league, even though he's never played the position until this year.
And when you go to the San Diego Park, what is their brand food item? Like, what's the thing that you get?
There are way too many food items at Petco Park, mainly because a lot of the local places, like the local restaurants that aren't changed or just here, have kiosks or presence in the park. The one I hear the most about are tri-tip nachos. Nachos, nacho cheese, and the tri-tip steak just right there on top of each other. And of course, it's San Diego. There's about several thousand burritos you can choose from. So there's no shortage of good Mexican food there. So everything about Petco food is fine except for one thing. I tried to buy a $3.94 Tony Gwynn Pale Ale, and they said, we don't have it. You don't have $3.94 at Petco Park? No, we've got Swing and Friar Ale. It turns out there's like 4 different Padres branded beers because San Diego's a huge craft brewery town. Apparently one of them got the license and the others didn't.
Andy from Sheffield, if you're looking for some samplings, you can head down to San Diego. However, Mr. Black, I think it's this week. Is it the big San Diego Comic-Con that's going on?
Yes, it is. And San Diego Comic-Con is about 500 yards from Petco Park. So it's going to be very, very busy. Fortunately, I think the Padres are out of town, as they should be, because they typically have to close downtown for several hours on game days. So instead of being swarmed with people in Padres shirts, they're going to be swarmed with people wearing costumes of all shapes and sizes.
Well, and Comic-Con is I've been to Comic-Cons in Canada. Calgary has one of the biggest Comic-Cons every year, and Edmonton has one. Toronto has a big Comic-Con. Vancouver. Have you been to a San Diego Comic-Con? And if you have, is it all that it's hyped up to be?
I did it when I was younger, and when I was a lot younger. I haven't been to one recently. It was still very big then, though. The place is packed. You can't drive around. You can't find a parking space. Even the normal little touristy places right outside where that neighborhood is are going to be filled with people for that entire week. If you're interested in pop culture and that sort of thing, you should at least go once, because it's not just comic books, movies, TV shows, whatever. It's all there for about a week.
And as a couple commenters have mentioned, Ezra and D King, I think, mentioned that with the strike going on in Hollywood, it's been scaled back quite a bit. So those people that are expecting to see a lot of their favorite stars are probably not going to get to see those, interviews that they usually do.
I have heard that. Like, the actors are joining the strike, and that includes doing marketing for their own stuff. So less people are going to be there. It's going to be an interesting time because these studios really are going to try to let AI write shows. Have you read like an entire thing that ChatGPT produced? It's not going to make a lot of sense. If you only read the first 3 sentences, it looks fine. But if you actually have to read the whole thing, it ain't going to work out. But they're going to try.
It's like anything, right? With AI, with the photos that are generated, when they started, they did, a pretty good job, but they couldn't really capture humans and facial expressions and hands. So you'd have people with 7 fingers, and you
Oh
have
yeah.
people that, look really, disfigured. And now that's come a long way. And the same is probably with video. There will be, within the next year or two, we can sit down and we can say, I want an action movie with Harrison Ford, Tom Cruise, and Jennifer Aniston. I want it to be based in 1932, and I want Mr. Black as the lead villain in the role. And boom, we're going to get.
I mean, I guess I can be the Humphrey Bogart from Angels Have Dirty Faces, but man, that's a long time ago. I don't think I've got the facial hair for it. I'll have to shave. But yeah, I guess maybe that might work out. Yeah.
But it's just going to come so far. And so Hollywood is, protesting and striking. And, there's talk that they're going to let them strike and hopefully, have them, lose out on their income and force them to come back that way. Who knows, what really goes on. But I feel bad for the people that bought weekend passes expecting to see their favorite stars. And now it's going to be basically a capitalist, grab with all this merchandise and not a lot of the big names probably there.
Unfortunately, that's always going to be the case. Capitalism in America just isn't going away. But at one point or another, everyone's got to stand up for themselves. Even from you with your boss, if you think you deserve a raise, you got to ask for one. Because if you don't ask for one, you're never going to get one. And if you're never going to get one, you're going to be just as poor as you were. Probably even poorer because of inflation. Unfortunately, the line has to happen. It has to be drawn somewhere.
And before we get to, the main topic of discussion and tournaments, we'll get to that in a sec. But since we're on to movies, are you a big movie guy? Have you seen any of the newest releases out there?
I did it when I was younger because back before the age of the internet, the way a young man could prove that he is learned would be to quote movies. Like the classics like Scorsese or some newer ones like Coen Brothers. But we drop movie circles of friends where are mostly men dropped movie quotes all the time. Now, younger people these days have more stuff like anime, TV shows, maybe even memes. But in the older days, before the turn of the millennium, you had to at least have some passing knowledge of good movie quotes just to be able to get along with most groups of men.
All right, give us a quote. Come on, you got all these memorized.
Way out west, there was this fella I want you to tell you about. I tell you by the name of Jeffrey Lebowski. At least that was the handle his loving parents gave him. He didn't have much use for it himself. My friends and I must have quoted the Big Lebowski at least 30% of the words that we had between one another. At least 30%. We could work in a quote about anything for no reason, even if it didn't make sense. That's what we would do. So yeah, we would do that sort of thing.
I'll be back. That's that's one I'll know. So is that what you said to the girls when you're out? Like, hey, baby, I'll be back.
I know about that. And these are, remember, I live in California. You don't want to bring up the governor. I mean, that's not a good idea.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Became a politician, and snakes. Why did it have to be
snakes?
Yeah. And we're not talking about Snakes on a Plane, although in its own way, that was a pretty good movie too with Nicolas Cage.
Snakes on the Plane had Samuel L. Jackson in it.
Yes.
Nicolas Cage's airplane movie was Con Air.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, I get my plane movies. Thank you for coming on and correcting me with my plane movies. And The Rock, wasn't it Sean Connery?
And Nicolas Cage, yeah, that Jerry Bruckheimer explosion movie on Alcatraz. But it had Sean Connery in it, so it was funny. Because it was so out of place to having this old man just play the bad ass and just beat up these U.S. Marines who are the bad guys in the movie. Yeah. It was funny.
Of course, perfect choice for Indiana Jones's father was Sean Connery. Like, you could not have a better casting than Sean Connery there. Just my favorite Indy.
I think I even heard that Ian Fleming, the writer of James Bond, decided to give James Bond a Scottish heritage because of how well Sean Connery played him in the first few movies.
Yeah. I mean, when you think of classic actors, Sean Connery, I think of Jimmy Stewart, like one of my all-time favorite.
Oh, of course, Jimmy Stewart. Yeah, he's got that voice that literally everybody recognizes. Yeah.
Okay, well, we have a Mr. Black Chat GTP video coming soon to a theater near you.
Oh, God help us. Oh, no.
All right. Well, We are going to take a quick break here so it doesn't interrupt us during your discussion of tournaments. And when we come back, we will be talking about, well, give us a brief synopsis of what you're going to go through today.
For the most part, we're going to try to stick to, as much as we can, to cap strategy in modern era tourneys. We're going to walk you through what you need to worry about, what you don't need to worry about, what matters and what doesn't, and some basic things you're just going to need to know to be able to play in cap tournaments. Because quite frankly, not enough of you guys play them. A lot of people fill quicks or opens, no problem. Oh, just my 26 cards, no problem. Easy. Cap tournaments are much like being a real baseball GM. You can't afford to fill every slot. You'll need to know which slots are important to fill and which ones aren't. And I'm going to stuff a PowerPoint presentation down your throats. Get excited.
All right. We'll be back in a couple minutes and continue talking about cap tournaments. Be back with Mr. Black in just a minute. All right. We are back, and a quick update on the Bounty tournament. Bounty going to game 5 with Naspace. Look at this. This is the closest first round we've ever had. Every single series except for one. The Wolves have moved on. Every other series is 2-2. So Wildcat Bandit, Ezra have come back from their 2-0 deficits, and we're going to 7 game 5s. You gotta like it. 7 game 5s. Mr. Black, do you play any of the perfect draft quicks, or are you just all about the cap tournaments?
Cap tournaments mostly. The only issue I have with perfect drafts, because the whole point is that I want to surprise people by bringing something they weren't ready for. I don't get to pick what to bring in perfect drafts. Dang it. Now, sometimes I even get a good draft, and that usually loses. And on the other hand, if I get what I think is an average or a bad draft, that's the one that ends up winning a prize. I do play them. I'm not an authority of them by any means. I'm definitely not the guy to ask about them. And I wouldn't even consider myself good at them. But they are there, and they're still a source of income if you're not doing anything.
Yep. And as Mr. Black mentioned when he was on the first time, he's not, more so into the card analysis and the breakdown of the cards like other modelers and other people in OOTP are. Mr. Black is all about, strategies and putting a team together, especially in cap tournaments, that is going to be competitive. And again, when you deal with perfect team, there are so many different opinions. Charles disagreed with Kidneys, and Kidneys disagreed with Izadafo, and Izadafo disagreed with Mr. Black. And you're always going to get, people with different opinions. And that's what's great about this game, because there is no one true answer. Everyone gives their opinion of what they think works the best. And when I used Mr. Black's sliders in my PTCS, it ultimately got me one of the cards, which is really good. I'll take it. I've been using those sliders, Mr. Black, in some of my other tournaments and having some success with those as well. And again, it's not going to work for everything, but it will work at times. And so, just want to say I have had some success with those sliders. And now we're going to talk about a corrected cap spending spectrum. So I'm going to let you kind of take over and go through things. Just let me know when you want me to go from one slide to the next. And at some point, we will jump in the game and maybe create a cap team, because we want you guys. We want D King. We want Mr. Audit. We want Cobra. We want Teddy O. We want you guys to play in these cap tournaments and have some fun with them, because there's a big learning curve, but I think Mr. Black's going to give you some basics that kind of ease that uneasiness that you might have with cap tournaments. So, Mr. Black, the floor is yours.
Well, the first thing I saw after the last time is I had we were talking about the differences in era tournaments, and I wanted to make the point about how the catcher moves down. And then a few days after the stream, I looked at it again and was absolutely aghast that I didn't move the third baseman up in dead ball. The third baseman is not anywhere near as useless in dead ball as he is in modern. So I needed to move him to the right a bit. This is just me doing a little bit of house cleaning, because once I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, I can't tell people the wrong information about dead ball. All I do is play dead ball. Okay. Anyway, if you haven't seen this slide before, this is just the spending spectrum in OOTP tourneys. You need to decide which position is more important to spend points on and which aren't. Mostly, How much do you need that position to bat for you? At DH, batting is all he does. His glove can do nothing for you. He has to be able to hit. So don't cheap out on a bat for DH. Pay someone to go in and knock in some runs for you. On the other side of the spectrum of the modern era is catcher. Catcher ability is so good and affects so much in modern era. It will get you so many strikeouts that you normally wouldn't have. He doesn't really need to hit. And especially with the advent of Jeff Mathis this year, almost everyone agrees that he's one of the best cards in the game just for that reason. He's cheap. He's a catcher. He's an okay hitter. Excellent catcher ability. He's in most teams for that reason.
I'll just cut in for a second. And, cheaping out for gloves, there are going to be outliers where a card is expensive, especially in the lower levels, and especially if they're limited edition or mission cards. You might have to pay up for them, but I always do because I find that over time they pay for themselves. Now, Jeff Mathis isn't cheap. Like he actually right now is one of the cheapest points because I saw him on the card shop for like 38,000. And at one time he was going for the high 50s and into the 60s. But because of the spotlight packs having a lot of the mission cards in it, Jeff Mathis has come down. So if you're looking for a catcher at any level, even in perfect, they're playing this guy, 38,000 for a 50 card might sound like a lot, but it is a long-term card likely in the game and well worth the investment, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Everyone is going to have him, at least for the most part. Those who have him are going to play him. In every category he is legal, he's almost always a good buy. The only downside is if you have so many points and you can afford to buy a better bat at catcher, I guess you can do that. But you can also still put Mathis in and buy another reliever or improve something else. It's always going to be the case. However,
DDM's a great point saying cheap in terms of cap spending, not in terms of what you're paying for him. So yeah, I guess we have to clarify.
We are referring to spending the cap points we have on our tournament. Another excellent card is 40 overall Lenny Randall. He's a utility infielder. He's expensive. He's going to cost you 30,000 points maybe. In cap tourneys, he is free, which is why we take him, because he's so good in that regard. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay. So now that we got the house cleaning done, here's actually what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about cap strategy for modern era, and here's the little bits of what we're going to do. First, I'm just going to explain the basic 14 shape, 14 batters, 12 pitchers, and typically what you need to buy. And then there's a few things you need to be aware of. The perfect problem, two-way players, and you got to be aware of some pitfalls that might show up if you're using two-way players. You need to be aware of that. E6's and Nerds United contribution to this, the cap number. You can see how much points you have to spend, and you will need to know because it does drive a lot of decision making. You may seem like you have a lot of choices at each bat slot. No, you don't. You only have 4. We'll go through what those are. Another thing to consider is lineup length. How many gloves are we going to bring and how many actual bats are we going to bring? We're not going to have enough to buy them all in most cases. As for pitchers, you can put almost anything you want in there. So you'll have to decide. We'll talk about how to decide about that. Once we're done with that, we'll actually start playing to win. We'll learn how to learn the category, get better at it, knowing what information we can get from that to tell us what cards to bring. And then finally, swinging for the fences. It's one thing to cash in these tournaments. If you cash in a 3 diamond pack tournament, the small prize is 1 gold pack. I mean, okay, but now you want to get the 3 diamond packs for finishing first. So we're going to do a little bit at the end to go finish first. And then finally, I don't have a slide for this, but I will go over some value cards this cycle that are just pretty good to have and show up in a lot of these cap tournaments for that reason.
All right. And I've looked at the presentation before coming on stream today, and I'm excited. I honestly can say I'm excited to try out a few cap tournaments because I see what you're going to present today, and it's just wealth of information. Again, this video will be on video on demand. If you miss it, if you can't catch it all, go check it on the video demand. Take screenshots, whatever you need to do. And if you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. We'll get to them when we can. Let's get on with this big agenda that we have today, starting with the modern era 1412.
Okay, now This is the basic breakdown of how many bats and how many pitchers you buy in modern era. Older eras, you just buy less pitchers and more batters. But this is what we're doing now. 9 starters, 9 starting hitters, 5 other batters to fulfill roles, rest players, or even be platoons. 5 starting pitchers and 7 relievers. Now, in open tournaments, I typically bring 15 batters. I stretch my pitchers out, so I don't need 12, I need 11. And now I have an extra platoon bat to bring to bear. This doesn't really work in cap tournaments because even if you squeeze out a roster slot, there isn't much point to it. You will not have enough points to buy a player for that roster slot. So 14-12 is pretty the standard. That's typically what you should stick with. Okay, next. Now, here's the first thing we need to understand. I call it the perfect problem because it typically comes up with perfect cards. You can't afford to pay the same price as your opponents and get a lesser card. If I'm buying 100 points for the build the lineup Mickey Lolik as a starting pitcher, and my opponents have the new John Tudor card or the new or any one of those high-end pitchers that just came out, they're going to be better than me. They just are. This isn't really an issue at the lower level formats, but it is at the top. So if you're playing a lot of these categories that have the high ceilings up to hundreds, your chances are limited in success. You're going to be going uphill because they will have an advantage over you for that regard. This just means you don't have to play the 100 ceilings. You can play the gold cap, the low diamond caps, any other smaller stuff like that. And even if it shows up a little bit elsewhere, for example, in diamond, the new Vladdy Jr., the Diamond Lou Gehrig, and the 4th of July Jason Giambi are all really, really good. If you don't have 2 of them, you're going to have a bad time in Diamond. So be aware of that and know if you're going to play a tournament and you can't bring the best card and your opponents can, well, don't pay max. That's a card you're going to need to not pay the most for. You're going to need to pick a value card there.
Yeah, excellent advice. So, and that's where most people, I think, are in. I'm in that basket as well. I don't have the high end cards. I don't have the Ken Griffey Jr. I don't have the Sandy Koufax and a lot of these cards that can or cannot be used. I'm not sure if limited editions are allowed in some of these, but
most of them they are, unfortunately.
Yeah. So find a cap tournament where you have really good cards, and that may be bronze, that may be silver, it may be gold, and invest in building that specific tournament up over time. Okay, excellent advice there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, now 2-way players in cap tournaments are almost always good. You get much more value for your point investment than a normal card would. But there are a few things you just need to be aware of, and so you don't make any mistakes. If you're going to use a 2-way player as a starting pitcher, he has to play DH. Obviously, he can't play left field. Does his bat play? You need hitting from your DH, no 2 ways of batting. So if your 2-way player does not have a good bat, are you sure you want to bring him? Is you sure there's not a better pitcher you can get at a better price? Just be aware of that. If you're playing a starting pitcher in a 2-way player in the field, for example, you're left fielder for the first 4 days, and then on day 5 you pitch. That's fine, but you will still need to be rested as a bench player because even though you're not in the field, on the day you're pitching, you're still a DH. That still hurts your bat. You're batting a fatigue percent. So you're still going to need rest sometime. Obviously, it's not going to be your pitching day, but someone's got to go in and play for him, even though he's not going to be playing the field that day. Regarding relievers, though, there's a big pitfall you need to be aware of. The AI manager doesn't know how to move a position player from the field to go play pitcher. If you're using your 2-way as a reliever, he can't pitch while he's out in the lineup elsewhere. You can fix this with platooning players at the same position or make sure he's not in the starting lineup. Then again, I do question why you're buying a 2-way player if he's not in the starting lineup. So take a look at the 2-way players that you're looking at that you have and might fit your category and see if you can measure them against similar pitchers and similar batters. See if they're good value. For example, the live 100 overall Shohei Ohtani, his pitching arm is about as good as 69 overall Lucas Giolito. I actually think Lucas Giolito is a better pitcher. So if I'm going to play Shohei Ohtani, is his bat worth 31 points? Because I can save 31 points right now by having Lucas Giolito pitch for him instead. Make sure you look at this for all the two-way players you consider playing.
Okay. Is there a, do you have a top end kind of, who would you say are the best two-way players right now in the game? Like a guy like Bullet Joe Rogan obviously would be one.
It's Bullet Joe Rogan. Although one of them I do find myself and a lot of people using is the Silver Brooks Kieschnick. He hits righties pretty well, and you need to be able to hit righties in silver. I don't think he's a great pitcher. However, he does slot in and left field. He does have a good bat. I've given him the number 5 starting slot many times. I think Kieschnick, the Baseball Reference 1 card, is pretty good in this regard.
How about Micah Owens?
Micah Owens. Let me look him up. Now, again, I always am looking at the bat first because win, lose, or draw, you have to hit today. If you can't hit and you can't score, you're never going to win. So I do look at the bat first. Micah Owens, okay. This guy is much more of a bat than a pitcher. As a matter of fact, with the 66 wrong side PBABIP, he's not that good of a pitcher for gold. I would play him as a left fielder first, and he could be the 12th or 13th reliever, because remember, you can't use him as a reliever when he's out in the field. So I wouldn't trust him to pitch. I would trust him to bat, though, because his bat's okay.
And Chadwick mentions Kotze.
Mark Kotze is good, too. He's the guy how I found out about this reliever problem. Kotze only has, 20 stamina? So he's a reliever only. If you're not platooning him or he's not otherwise on the bench, he can't pitch. So that's an issue you have to worry about.
All right. So there is your two-way player advice. I always wonder about that too. Now I know we're talking cap tournaments, but is the formula similar if you're in, for example, one of my bronze tournaments, I can't remember what it is, my bronze quicks, it's no DH. So if you're in a no DH tournament, are you looking to draft pitchers that can hit, or do you think it doesn't matter that much?
Honestly, I would consider the ability to hit gravy. It's helpful. It's cool to have, and it'll help. I do think they're pitchers first. Also, remember, you always have the option to pull out your pitcher to put in a bench bat. If you have a two-way player in there, you're not going to pull him out because he can hit for himself. That means his usefulness is limited by his stamina. If he can go long into the game and get more plate appearances, great. If he can't go into the long of the game and he's only going to get 2 plate appearances, well, your bat ain't that great because we only get to use it twice.
Okay. I was just wondering, like, if I'm in a perfect draft and my first screen comes up and I got Satchel Paige and Bullet Joe Rogan as my choices and John Tudor, 3 great pitchers, and it's a no DH situation, I'm taking Bullet Joe, right? Of the 3, even though he might not be the best pitcher, he's close enough that his bat will make up for it.
Absolutely. I would take Bullet Joe Rogan as the first pick too for that reason. But that's because he's the best two-way player and he's at the top of the heap. A lot of these two-way players like Owens is a much better hitter than he is a pitcher. And I don't really want him to, I know there's a lot better pitchers in gold than Owens, but his bat is better. So I would pick him for his bat. Okay. So the E6 guys, the Nerds United guys came up with this, and unfortunately this is really important, so you kind of have to do it. Every cap tournament has what's called the cap number. How many maximum level players can we afford to buy? And this is going to drive a lot of decisions. We're going to have to keep it in mind. There's some things we can do with more money to spend. There's some things we can do with less money to spend. Specifically, if you're wondering, the formula is the tournament cap time minus 26 times the floor of the tournament divided by the range, which is ceiling minus floor. But a real easy way to think about it is how many max level players can I buy? Go to the next slide for me. What that actually means, though, if it was a true open, you can play any cards you want. It's a cap number of 26. You have 26 spots. You can afford 26 max level players. Cap number tournaments that are above 16 aren't really caps. Many of the PTECS tournaments have had very high cap numbers, and you can almost buy almost everyone you want. At 16, a cap number of 16, I can buy 9 bats, 5 starters, that's 14, 1 reliever, and 1 platoon guy. That's everything else. Everyone else is a 40, and that's a lot. That's plenty. I can do almost everything I wanted to anyway. 16 is very high, as I mentioned in the weekly gold cap. 13 is high. This is very common for many of the tournaments to have a cap number of 13.
Let me just interrupt you for a sec, Mr.
Go ahead.
Black. So when you're talking 16, because on the when we go into the tournaments, it gives a number like 1348, 1600. That's what you're talking about. Just add 2 zeros. It would be 1600 in the tournament.
You need to know what the total budget is and then subtract the minimum budget. If you took the minimum card possible, how many points would you spend? In most cases, it's 1,040 because the floor is 40 points times 26 is 1,040. So if I get a cap value of 1,500 and the minimum is 40, 1,500 minus 1040 is 460. Let's say it's a silver cap. I can buy a 79-point card. I can spend 39 points per card because that's the max you can buy in silver. 460 divided by 39 is about 12, 13, somewhere around there, which means I can buy 12 to 13 maximum level carriers. It's a high cap number. It's not low. It's not very high. It's high. There's other stuff we're going to be talking about later, what this actually means, but I do need you guys to get your bearings and to know what a high number is and a low number is. 10 is medium. It's the OOTP era is probably the highest profile cap that does it. And 7 is low, the daily low cap that runs overnight. Even though that is a perfect problem tournament, and there are a lot of super powerful 100 level cards you're going to get there, you can't afford them. There's so few of them that you can go around. You're going to have to buy cheaper cards and stretch them out in order to be able to do it. And yes, this is only for the perfect team version of the game because there aren't really cap tournaments in the single player game. You have actual money and an actual budget you can spend to play the single player game. 5 is a cap number that doesn't exist. It's called super low. I'm agitating for the Saturday tournament lab to be a super low cap, mainly because I believe that the lower the cap number is, the more opportunity there is for skill expression. If the cap number is high, people just bring their best cards. When the cap number is low, you can see how many of the whales just don't know what to do. All their big cards are there, but which ones do they keep? Which ones do they leave out? How many 40s do I have to fill in the gaps and all that stuff? Now, one of the first things to be aware of, though, is higher cap numbers mean more platoon bats and more depth. Lower cap numbers mean less platooning and less depth. Obviously, if you're playing a low cap number tournament, your bullpen is going to be put together with split and glue. It's just not going to be good. You don't have the points to spend on it. Whereas on a higher cap number tournament, your bullpen and your bench can be much better than they normally would be for that reason. Okay, let's.
D. Dempsey is saying, bring me a 1,100 cap tourney lab. So that would be a low 1,100?
In 1,100, the minimum is 1040. So if it's an open tournament, you can buy one 100-point card and everything else needs to be 40.
Okay, that is super low.
That is pretty low. I agree.
All right. So 100 and then a bunch of 40s, or you balance it off. And what would be the average?
What you'd have to do is to stretch them out and get length. Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is me realizing I accidentally had an extra slide in it. Now, keep this in mind, though. You have to understand that your opponents and you aren't going to have as many options in lower cap tournaments. You don't have to worry about stuff as much. With higher cap tournaments, you have more options to worry about. One example is the splittiness of pitchers. If nobody has platoon bats, if you get to guess the right side for the pitcher, he'll mow through the other time the guy's lineup. However, if everybody has platoon bats, a splitty pitcher is not a good idea. Even they'll start the game with better batters against him, and the pinch hitter will be available later in the game. That's one of the things that changes with the cap number.
Okay, so as a student here of Mr. Black, what you're telling me is if it's a high cap tournament, don't put in splitty pitchers.
Correct. In a lower cap tournament, a splitty pitcher might be exactly what you need.
Okay.
Okay. As for the actual choices of what to buy for bats, there's only 4 of them. If you have the best bat in the slot, get it. If you don't, or you don't have the points for it, you can think of a value bat. There's plenty of cards who aren't 100s who are great, who paid above their weight. From Joey Gallo at 69, Jason Dominguez, the Yankee outfielder, I think he's an 87. There's plenty of good bats lower down the card. All the Lou Gehrig's, like for example. You don't have to have the best one, but you do need to know where you can get some bats from. Or if it's a skill position, you can buy a value glove. It's Greg Gagne at 62, Tommy Teveno at 53, Brett Phillips at 49. There's a lot of value gloves you can put in the skill positions where their glove will still give you plenty of value, even though their bat won't.
Fielder Jones, Jim Fogarty, Gilwater. Like there's a lot of good outfielders with those value gloves too.
And then last but not least, you can punt with a 40 in the card, with a 40 card slot. Some of these 40s are really good. I think this Lenny Randall card is a little too powerful, and I'm really annoyed that he's a limited edition card. However, in a longer tournament, your bench bats are going to play a lot, maybe somewhere around 1/3 to 1/2 of the games, especially if you don't get a lot of rest days. So you might want to still go the extra mile and try to go from 40 to 45 or 49 just to have somebody on the bench because you've got to use him. He's going to be there. He's going to play. The 40s that you're never going to use are called mop-up pitchers, and we'll get to them later.
There was in the recent baseball reference set, there was a 40 level catcher. I don't know if you have him handy there, but would he be a good option if you don't have a Mathis or you don't want to invest a lot into a catcher?
Yes, Chris Cannizzaro. He's a Padre. He is a better bat than Austin Hedges. He is a worse glove than Austin Hedges. You'll have to decide if you want the glove or not. Remember that catcher ability makes strikeouts. If your pitchers are strikeout based, you have high stuff, you probably should take Hedges if you're going to spend 40 on a catcher. Okay. If their pitchers are not strikeout based, or you are playing in an era where strikeouts just don't happen that much, Cannizzaro is probably your better bet.
Okay. But don't you want two? Like, would you take Hedges and the other?
We're not bringing Mathis?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Mathis is enough of a problem where he's going to be in many of these locations. But then again, some eras just don't have strikeouts. And if you can't strike somebody out, you don't need the catcher ability. Mathis is not playing dead ball. Sorry, it just ain't for you.
Right.
As for which one goes where, remember the cap value spread. If you're going to buy bats, put them at DH, first, third, left, and right. If you're going to buy gloves, catcher, shortstop, center field, second base. If you're cheaping out on DHs and you're buying a lot of points to get the best shortstop you can, you're doing it wrong. Defense is cheap. Bats are not. If you're going to spend points on a position player, he needs to hit. If you're going to save points on a position player, he might as well be in a skill position with a great glove. So we're not really interested in an expensive batter card for his glove, unless he happens to have a bat too. So, for example, my best example for this is the Baseball Reference 1 90 overall Jackie Bradley Jr. center fielder. Great glove. One of the best gloves in the category for low diamond. I think he's a fine low diamond card. I will play him in low diamond opens. In caps? No. Get off my team. I can buy a glove just almost as good as yours for much cheaper. I can buy a bat that's much better than yours for the same price. Unfortunately, Jackie Bradley Jr. just isn't helpful in cap tournaments for that reason. He's a great glove that's expensive. We would rather him to be a great bat that's expensive.
Okay, yeah, good to know. Well, we're about halfway through. Going to take a quick break here, Mr. Black, and hydrate a little bit and run to the washroom if you need to. But we'll be back, guys, in about 2 minutes. And for those that are new here, as Hero Driver mentioned out, we're talking about tournament building strategies. If you're new to the game, you might want to start, playing some of the free perfect drafts, some of the quick drafts to kind of get a handle of how tournaments work before going into this. But this is definitely something that is fun and can be of value of you down the line if you're brand new to the game. All right, we are back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back in. Quick tournament update here. The bounty has been claimed. The bounty this week, this Monday, has been claimed by Nass Base and his Hawaiian Rainbows in a thrilling 19-run game, 10-9 over the Johnny Cash luggage tags. And again, for those that are new to the game, this is my theme team creation. It's not quite there yet. It's not a theme team yet. We will build that hopefully next Monday on the stream and get it into the league in a couple weeks. But yeah, this was a close game. Nass Base scoring 1 in the 8th to take a 10-9 lead and taking the bounty 3-2. Whoever wins the tournament, of course, will win 5 packs from me, 3 packs from OOTP in tournament game. So congrats to those that advanced: the Abandoned, Fanatics, Michigan Wolves, Nass Base's Rainbows, the Eagles, the Seminoles, the Turtle Bears, and the Tornadoes. And looks like quite the matchup here with the Tornadoes and the Turtle Bears, 2 teams that usually make it quite far in these tournaments. So again, you'll have your chance tomorrow on stream at about 1:30 Eastern Standard Time for our next bounty tournament. Congrats again to Nass Base on taking the bounty today. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. And EVC, if you're still here, running a little bit late today, probably raid over to you sometime before 4 p.m. Eastern, might go about a half hour over. Still a few slides to go through and a giveaway to do at the end for 10 packs. So yeah, we'll raid into you once we're done here. All right, continuing on to the next slide.
Okay, so as you saw on the last slide, you saw which positions to punt on and which ones to invest in. Remember, though, you got to score runs to win a baseball game. If you don't buy enough bats, you're never going to score enough runs to win. I see a lot of these players in these low or slower cap number tournaments. Say the cap number is 10. 5 starting pitchers, 5 bats, everyone else is a 40. Well, the bottom half of your lineup isn't going to hit. And if I can get your starters out of the game, and in modern era and they don't have 110 stamina, I almost certainly can get them out of the game. I can tee off on your 40s later in the game. You need to be aware of length is almost as important as the card quality themselves. I've watched enough Padres baseball to know if you just don't have enough hitters in your lineup, you're never going to score. You're never going to win. If you only paid for 4 bats in your lineup, this is suicidal. You're never going to score enough runs to win in any era. It's just not going to fly. If you spend for 5 or 6 bats, you're going uphill. You still need some luck, and your bats are going to go cold for a while. Hopefully that little cold snap isn't enough to end your tournament if it all happens in the same series. 7 or 8 bats seems to be normal, especially in the Jeff Mathis meta. Almost everyone is having him. He's not much of a bat himself. So he's the 1 hole and 8 real bats are there. If you have the points to buy the 9th bat, your offense is going to be good. It's going to be better than average in whatever category you're in. However, the more you spend on bats and the fewer you spend on gloves also means the more you are going to need to spend on pitching. If you cheap out and buy a lot of gloves, a lot of lesser pitchers can do much better and you can save some points there. The opposite is also true. If you don't buy any gloves, you need great pitchers. I hope you have enough points to spend on them. Okay, what's next? Okay, now which pitches do we pick? Unfortunately, nearly every pitcher available in the category could be used. Depends on what their shape is and whether or not their ratings are. Which ratings to pick isn't really kind of beyond the scope of what we're talking about here, but how many should we pick is what we can talk about. And you need enough to do the job. There's 9 innings in a game. You got to be competitive for 9 innings. A lot of these people are running what I call a naked bullpen in modern era. All starters, every reliever is a 40. That's okay. It would make sense in an earlier era where the starters went the distance all the time. But not in modern era, they don't. So for at least a couple innings, I'm going to get to play golf against a 40 at the tail end. or even worse, I'm going to get to play against a dead or tired starter in the 7th or 8th. A lot of games are lost for this reason, where you're just better off buying relievers to do that job. Now, first of all, look at the stamina of your starters and try to have them all be the similar number. This way, you can match up how many relievers to give them, and it'll all work out. For example, if you have several 80 stamina starters, and then you start Lucas Giolito, and I think it's 65 stamina, Lucas Giolito is going to need a reliever where the other guys aren't. This isn't that big a deal to worry about, but it is something to keep in mind. Stamina is important, especially how much you can get out of a pitcher. Now, as I mentioned last time, you want to buy relievers in pairs. The idea is that one guy is pitching and the other guy is resting, and they take turns. If everything goes smooth, almost any reliever in the game, regardless of stamina, can pitch 25 pitches a day with 1 day of rest. 1 day on, 1 day off, and it's about 2 innings. It's not going to go smooth. Stuff is going to go wrong all the time. You're just going to have to live with it. Even, for example, if you set your orders to bench my pitcher at 70%, he's going to pitch and he's going to end up at 71. He's going to pitch the next day and it'll be at 19. You set it to 75, and then he's benched at 74. It happens all the time. It's just chaos that you're just going to have to live with. But keep in mind, like, what you can do with that. If you have long stamina starters that can go 7, 1 pair of relievers that goes 2, that means I got to buy 7 pitchers and I have 5 40s. Okay, that makes sense. You can have 5 innings out of your starter, 2 pairs of 2-inning relievers. That means you buy 9 pitchers. You have 3 40s. You can all these are options you can choose. All these are things that you can do. So keep in mind, though, you need to do the job. So
when you're talking about pairs for pitchers, are you talking like a pair of stopper roll pitchers, a pair of middle relief pitchers?
Yes, specifically relievers by role. One guy can only do it at a time, but he's not going to be able to do it the next day. He has to rest. Much like a catcher, your backup catcher is going to play 1 game out of 3 because you can't let your starting catcher play the 3rd game. It's going to cost him too much fitness. Where you get the relievers in pairs for the same reason. Otherwise, you'll get your pitcher winning on the 1st day. That's nice. What if you need him on the 2nd day? You want to pay him to be on the bench? You're better off paying for less than that 1 good reliever, getting 2 decent relievers, and they're there to do the job.
Does that include setup? Are you getting a pair of setup guys, or are you just going middle relief stoppers?
If I'm going 7 innings from the starters, 2 from the relievers, I'm going stoppers only. If I'm going 5 from the starters, 4 from the relievers, I have 2 pairs, 2 setups, 2 stoppers. Okay. So what does it actually mean? How far can our starter go? I have a conservative estimate here for you, how much stamina you need to go the distance. 50 stamina, 4 innings. 65 and 5, 75 for 6, 90 for 7, 105 for 8, and I think you need 120 stamina to be trusted to go 9. These are conservative estimates. You're more than welcome to try and stretch them out and get more than one if you can't. So if you want to try to get lucky, you can do that and save some points this way. But still, though, this is kind of what you'd expect. If you're paying full price for a starter and he only has 45 stamina, well, you better buy some relievers too, because otherwise you're going to get trounced in the 5th inning. Okay, let's keep going. Well, I got one more on this topic, I think.
Yeah, that's I really like that information and kind of this rough estimate of how long your starters can go, because as you said, if you have 5 starters that have 105 stamina, your need for those extra relievers, you can punt a lot of your relievers then because you've got the stamina starters. So yeah, excellent.
In fact, as I'm about to mention on the next slide, once you have enough to go the distance, you're not going to buy all 12 pitchers. You're not going to pay for all 12 pitchers. There are plenty of innings a baseball team has to pitch that are just not important, low leverage innings. Someone's got to do the job, and that's what 40s are for. At least 2 pitchers should be given the mop-up role. Never pay for them. They're only going to play when the game doesn't matter. You can even give 3. You can even have more if you're not buying that many pitchers. Just remember that you want to steer the high leverage innings towards your starters and your important relievers, and your low leverage relievers are mop up guys to save the relievers that are important. So here are the few options I proposed. We can have our starters go the distance. This is a much better strategy in older eras than it is in modern era. Or as I mentioned, we can go 7 and 2. We can go 5 and then 2 pairs of 2. And we can buy an extra reliever if we want. Sometimes you just have an odd number of points left. Hey, I've got 5 points. Maybe there's a 45 I can buy. All these are options you can have. But remember, some of those pitchers have got to be low leverage mop-up guys. You don't want your important arms to be spent on a game that is 10 runs apart. Okay. Now, what side are they going to be? You want lefties? You want righties? Well, if they're all going to be the same side, you do have an advantage in that you can set up your relievers easier that way, and you can tire them out the other team's lineup. With a higher cap number, this is going to be easier for you as you tire it out one side, and you will face either wrong-sided or bench players later in the series, which might help your number 5 starter out. He may need that help if he's a two-way player and is not that good of a pitcher. On the other hand, though, if the cap number is low, you don't really need to do this. There are no platoon hitters that he has that you can tire out. That's another reason to keep the cap number in mind. But on top of it, the most important thing is to know the category. A simple example, the starting pitching in gold is going to be about 80% lefty. Maybe you'll find a few Daniel Espinos here or there, but it's going to be 80% lefty. Your batters are going to need to be able to hit left-handed pitching. Your pitchers are going to need to be able to deal with those right-handers who can kill lefties. There's no way around it. It's just what you're going to face.
Yeah, I think that's important to mention that if you're getting into these, specific level tournaments, as Mr. Black mentioned, gold is the best example where the meta gold pitchers, most of them are left-handed. Yeah, you've got, as you said, Daniel, yes, you got Apple, I guess, who might be considered a righty. But then I guess as you're crafting your team, are you, like for your batters, you're looking for the ones that pound the left-handed pitchers, right? And you're willing to spend up more for those if they're better against the lefties.
When I'm expecting gold pitchers to face, of course. A lot of this stuff is going to come down to you guessing the right side of pitching or hitting you're going to face and getting using the right splitty guy at the right time. Because this is an equalizer that even if you may not have the best cards, you can always bring off a super splitty card like Iron Lou Gehrig. On the right side of the plate, he's a really much better card than his number says he is.
Right. Or reverse splits, you kind of look at reverse splits and, someone that's a righty that might be better against the right-handed pitchers that might
reverse splits is a million times more useful as a pitcher because it's just the opposite. It's negative splittiness. It's super great.
Okay.
On a batter, though, reverse splits aren't as helpful because of the AI manager. It doesn't really understand how to use them very well. If I have a left-handed batter like the Diamond Chuck Klein, he's better against left-handed pitching despite the fact that he's a lefty. If I tell my AI manager to pinch hit and put him in, he's going to hit bat Chuck Klein against righties because he's going to think that the lefty-righting pitching matchup matters. No, I don't want you to do that. I want you to get him to hit against lefty pitching. It's hard to get the AI manager to do that. So forward splits on batters are great. Reverse splits on batters are just not as good because the AI manager just doesn't use them right.
Well, that's interesting because now there's a whole new strategy involved here because, again, in gold tournaments where the dominant pitchers are left-handed, do you take that risk and go contrarian and say, you know what, I'm going to go with 5 righties and try to maximize my performance, thinking that they have the wrong batters in the lineup, especially in a cap tournament where you're buying only a certain amount of batters?
Absolutely. You will see very often in these categories that people are noticing what the right pitchers are, and they start bringing the bats to compensate for that. Eventually, you're going to have to go and switch it up and surprise them. Hey, if everyone else is going to be playing scissors, I need to be playing rock. If everyone else starts bringing rock, it's time for me to bring paper. Right?
Great analogy. Yeah. And yeah, that's the fun in these cap tournaments too, is outthinking, like Survivor, outthink, outwit, outplay. And when you're crafting, like, let's say you decide to go with the meta 5 lefties. Are your stoppers both lefties too? They both righties? Does it matter?
Most people do not touch their pinch hit settings in the strategy page at all. If you never touch it, they're going to pinch hit in about the 7th inning. So if you're going to send a pitcher in after the 7th, usually like you will for a stopper, he can't be splitty, because if he is, he will draw pinch hitters normally. Except if it is a low cap number tournament, they don't have a platoon bat. You're more than welcome to put a splitty pitcher in there if you think he's going to be the right side, simply because he's not going to draw pinch hitters, and if he does, he's going to face a 40. Now, sometimes Dave Kingman comes out and hits a home run off you. I'm sorry. But for the most part, remember, with a lower cap number, pitcher splittiness is much more useful, just because there's no platoon bats to punish you.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I know, maybe it's other tournaments where you have 5 lefty starters, and then you got all your middle relievers, righties, and then you have your 2 stoppers as lefties again. But with cap tournaments, that may be different.
Yeah, it's less of an issue. Keep the cap number in mind. Keep your pitching strategy in mind. Now, let's talk about actually learning the category. Once you go in and you play one of these tournaments, it's not reasonable to expect to win at your first time. So that's okay. Just put a team together, play a few, and see what happens. However, if you actually keep playing this category and you'd like to win, you need to know what to expect and prepare to beat them. In the scissors meta, you got to bring rock. Mostly, this comes down to the breakdown of the platoon splits, both as pitchers and hitters, and if there's some common enough cards that you need to worry about them. For example, in Diamond, that Diamond Lou Gehrig's anti-Ks is the only bad thing about his card. If you're going to be expecting Diamond Lou Gehrig, you should bring strikeout pitchers, because striking out Diamond Lou Gehrig is the best way to get Diamond Lou Gehrig out. That's pretty specific, but you understand what I mean. Now, this is a lot of work. If you want to actually do the counting of how many players on each side, you got to export the data, put it in a pivot table, touch Excel, which I would never voluntarily do outside of the office. Fortunately, there's an easier way to do this. You can eyeball this without too much effort. So why don't you bring up a tournament that is finished for me? Any tournament that's finished, let's click into it and I'll show you how to do this.
All right. So it doesn't have to be a cap tournament, right?
Any tournament, as long as it's finished.
Okay, let's go back here and let's go into this one. All right, so yeah, I mean, some thinking, some strategizing that needs to go into it. Obviously, you need the cards, because these are traditional tournaments where you have to own the cards. You're not drafting cards like a perfect draft. And so again, a way that you can analyze this, you go into a tournament that is finished.
Hey, you won. Congrats.
Yeah, bronze. Hey, beat the Washington Ghosts.
7 games in the final. All right. You beat Charlie Lee, too. Wow. Okay. From here, there is a pretty quick and dirty way to eyeball the breakdown, the platoon splits in the tournament. Go ahead and underneath the tournament, go to statistics. The tournament drop down at the top. Okay, at the yellow bar there, go to sortable stats. And we're going to select all position, all batters. And we're going to set a filter. Whatever filter you got in there, we're going to clear it. All batters. We don't want to get everyone on the roster. And we don't care about people who don't play. Let's filter out everyone that has less than 10 plate appearances. So batting stats, PA 10. It's going to be under batting stats, not batting ratings.
At least 10?
At least 10. That shouldn't crowd out too many of the regulars, but it will crowd out the oddballs or the defensive replacements that we don't care about pitching to. It's okay. Do that. Now, on the top there, we're going to sort the throws column. It's right next to the bats column, BTG. We're going to click the T. All right. Now they're all lefties. Now we're going to scroll down until they start becoming righties. Oh, that was quick. Now look at the slider portion on the right there. Only like 20% of the pitchers in this bronze category are lefties. 80% of the pitchers in this bronze category are righties. If you're playing bronze best of sevens, it sounds like it's 80% righty, 20% lefty. I need to consider bringing left-handed bats that can hit right-handed pitching, right? You do the same thing for batters. For pitchers. Hold on a second. Let me make sure I'm not confusing myself here. We're looking at batters, not pitchers. That we shouldn't sort by throws.
Yeah, I was wondering why we're sorting by throw.
Okay,
yeah.
So we're going to go by bats instead. So,
Okay.
okay, we're starting at switch. How many switches we got?
We got a fair bit.
Yeah, okay. So
About a third.
About a quarter. Wow. That's a lot.
A lot of lefties. I'd say maybe it looks like
I think it looks like about a quarter
40.
switch, 30% lefty, 45% righty. Okay, that's pretty diverse. You're going to need to be able to cover both sides of the plate. You can't sell out everyone on one side of the plate in this category. You're going to deal with everything, so you need to be able to handle that. Okay. Then, and you do the pitchers, you say the same thing. You can just look at select pitchers, filter it out to one game started, and then eyeball the throws. Do it for a few categories, and you'll have a pretty good idea of what the percentage breakdown is, and also what cards are more popular than anyone else. We need to know that not to copy them, but to beat them, because we know we will expect them. Okay, so 3 IP, sure. Oh, wow. But 55-45 righty-lefty.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So that's a little more, the batting needs to be a little more right-handed because the pitching is more left-handed in this category. Okay. Now you can do this for every category, especially if you're just starting out. So play a few. It's okay if you lose, and just get the lay of the land so you know what side of the plate that you can put your cap points into, because of the ones that you need or what you need to put them in. You don't want to put them on the wrong side.
And some of these tournaments will be a lot more diverse. Like you said, when you go into gold, you're probably going to notice a lot more lefty pitchers. And so some will be a little bit more easy to interpret, whereas bronze, it's not a huge difference between lefties and righties.
Correct.
And for those that are new or just getting in cap tournaments, again, the way that you find these, you go into your tournaments, you get 3 free tournaments that you can enter. If you're PT Plus member, you get 4. You're on traditional tournaments. And then you go up to the salary cap area and you go has team cap. And that will filter all the cap tournaments. And there's not a ton, but there's enough for you to get your feet wet at all the different levels.
Almost all of the cap tournaments are dailies or weeklies. Now, you only get to play one a day, so you can't get a lot of data in one day. You're just going to have to, if you lose in the first round in one day, sorry, see you tomorrow. On the other hand, though, when they're not quicks, they almost all have actual prizes. Instead of winning 5 standard packs, you can win 3 diamond packs or a choice pack as high as high diamond in the dailies or a perfect choice pack in the weeklies. It's not reasonable to expect for most players to enter the special edition cap. That's a very expensive tournament to play. But for example, the weekly bronze cap or the weekly silver cap, these are absolutely within your ability to play. And if you know what you're doing, you might get a very pretty black card that you can either play on your team or sell for 6 figures or more.
Right. And another thing to keep an eye on is a lot of these times, because the tournaments don't fill by the time it fires off, a lot of times players that are in the tournament will ask for the tournament to be cut, which means cut in half. So instead of having 128 players, if you get in and the tournament's ready to go, there may only be 64. And you still get that higher level prize, won't you?
Correct. Instead of having to win three series to win a prize, you only have to win 2 series to win a prize. Cut tournaments are awesome. If you can play them, you should. They're hard to see because they don't really last all that long once they get cut. However, cut tournaments are gravy. It's great to play in them. If you happen to see one and you have even remotely close to a card to a card collection that can compete there, give it a try because you get a free win.
And here's an example. We've got the daily bronze floor cap, which is set to fire in 1 hour and 24 minutes. You'll get a choice pack with a high diamond prize, 64 teams, only 21 are entered. So in 1 hour and 24 minutes, someone may request this to be cut, which brings it down to 32 teams, which means you have a much better chance of coming into the prize, if I'm reading that correctly.
That's correct. Now, if a 33rd person signs up before that time goes out and it goes into quicks, they can't cut it because they can't leave a player out when they cut a tournament. So you don't really want to be the 33rd guy who signs up. To request a cut for these tournaments, you go into the OOTP Discord. In the tournament channel, you ping server support, hey, can we get a cut in this category? And hopefully Axel or someone else will cut it in time. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's the best thing. Go to the Discord, go to the tournament channel, and like Mr. Black said, ping support. Say, can I have a cut? Can we cut? And then give the specific tournament number, name. And within a couple minutes, they usually respond as long as it doesn't get over half full. If it has filled up, they won't.
Also, it also have to be in quicks. Its waiting time has to have expired. So they're not going to cut a tournament before it is scheduled to start.
Right. So this status time has to go down to 0, which at point it will be ready in the quick section. But you can see it here as well. So that's another kind of a strategy too, is look for the tournaments within a couple hours ready to fire off that are less than half full, enter it, and take the chance that it might be cut and request it to be cut, because then you've increased your odds of getting a prize a lot more. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So for beginners, what would you recommend for caps that, they don't need the LEs, they don't need the best cards out there, but they have a competitive shot? Is there anything out there that you would recommend?
The daily bronze cap, straightforward, is a really simple tournament that anyone can play. Even if you don't have Jeff Mathis, you will be fine. You don't necessarily need him to succeed. Any decent amount of good catchers will do it, and any amount of hitters can do it. You know what the good hitters are. For example, we're all going to bring Joey Gallo. We all are. We also know that he's a left-handed bat. He has great power and he has great eye. So we need to be able to have a pitcher that has HR rate and control to beat Joey Gallo. This is a gross oversimplification, but if you've been watching these sorts of streams, you know your way around iron and bronze. You can play in those categories. You can easily see what the good cards are, what you should expect, and also know where to put your points to build a pretty good cap team together.
And keep in mind that the bronze, the iron, they fill up very quickly. They fill up within a couple hours. So, when you're checking, it may already say full, like the bronze and iron and silver already are, because there are a lot of beginners. There are a lot of people that don't have the high cards that just want to play cap tournaments. So be aware, they fire off at the same time every day. A new tournament will come up. As soon as one starts, the next one for the next day, if it's a daily, will be ready to register for. So once you know those times, you can set your alarm. You can, make a notification for you so that you get in, because within an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours tops, these low-level ones tend to fill up.
Also, remember, the cap tournaments are not as popular as the open tournaments. If you want to sign up for most of the irons, like the late iron or the historical iron, you typically need to sign up for it an hour after it's created and wait 22 to 23 hours before it actually starts. It's not the case with cap tournaments. Because they're less popular, it's a lot easier to get into them. They don't fill as fast. Right. So if you can get good at playing caps, you can play more tournaments just for this reason.
Right. And as you can see on my screen, I don't have any slots available right now, but there's only one that is full before it fires off, and it's got 20 minutes before it fires off. All the other cap ones there that are not currently underway are available. And that's why people like Mr. Black and Charles and Isadaffel and all these cap players are trying to encourage other people to get in, because it's a ghost town sometimes and these are not filling up. So get involved, try it. Even if you get knocked out in 4 games, it allows you to go into the tournament after and look at what cards people are using. So the next time you enter, you can kind of, emulate some other players and do some research and build up to buy these cards.
Correct. Yeah. Like, for example, here, I'm already out of the bronze cap. Oh, well. I'm going to play the special ed cap. I'm trying to do well in the wild cards, the 7 PTCS category this week. I don't miss the OOTP era cap. I don't miss the live cap. I play them almost every day. I've won the live cap 3 out of the last 8 times. It's the live caps are the one, or all the live tournaments are great because it's cheap to buy the deck. You do have to buy a few perfects, but once you have almost all of them, you're ready for anything. You can put any player team that you want, and you should be able to not worry about whales or any of that problem.
Okay. So a couple more slides here if you want to go through them.
Yeah, let's talk about actually winning. If we've studied the category and we know what to expect, we're going to need to see if we have the best cards in the category. You'll need to go buy them if you don't. For those of you who are playing Iron and Bronze, cap or not, I expect you to have at least looked at Charlie Lee by now. The 56 overall Iron pitcher is really, really good, both as an open pitcher and as a cap pitcher. He's going to do work for you if you get him. You should get him if you can. Now, the more the cap number comes up again, the higher the cap number, we can cover more sides of the plate. In a lower cap number, we're going to need to pick a side, and we're going to need to put all our eggs in that basket. And you'll have to decide, okay, are we going to do everything on one side, swing for the fences, or are we going to split them up and try to play conservatively and try to be ready for more? Well, the answer is on the next slide. If you're going to win one of these tournaments, you're going to have to beat everybody. You're not going to be able to beat the same team 6 times. You're going to need to beat whatever you get dealt in 6 times. Some casual categories, some of the easier ones like the weeklies, the bronzes, and the irons, the ones that are easy to get into, you can have some easy opponents as late as round 4. In some of the tougher categories, all the riffraff is gone by round 2. It's just the way the cookie crumbles.
I am riffraff in those higher tournaments.
Not so much after you sat through this, though. So anyway, though, just be honest with yourself and estimate your chances. If you think you've got the cards and you think you got the category, do you think you're a favorite or do you think you're an underdog? If you're a favorite, you should take fewer chances. Try not to do anything crazy. You have the better cards, you have the better knowledge. Don't try to get too tricky. On the other hand, if you think you're an underdog, you should try to get lucky and try to guess right by going all in on one side. For example, the daily bronze floor cap is a tough tournament to win because it allows 100 cards and the perfect problem is an issue. I'm still going to play it though. 1, it's a best of 3. I can very easily catch a team with much better cards in a best of 3 series. 2, if you're tracking what the latest limited editions or big releases are, those are the cards you're going to see. I'm going to sell out to hit that sided pitching and to stop that sided hitting. I have a chance in these tournaments, so I play them. I may not think I'm going to win, but at least I'm able to get in there, and I might actually bring back a prize because I'm willing to take some chances, knowing I'm the David, I'm not the Goliath.
And as Warbot mentions, the lower the best of, the better chance that I guess the weaker teams have of squeaking one out and taking out what might be perceived the favorite team, like the Goliath.
Absolutely. If we play in the long run, the better player is always going to show up. If we only play one game, anything can happen. So the shorter series the format is, the more variance there is, the more of an advantage there is for lesser teams and more of a disadvantage there is for the better teams. I would really like to play that silver dead ball tournament in the afternoons, but I'd have to queue for it the day before. And then it's a best of 3. So here I am thinking I got the best dead ball knowledge, but I didn't hit for 2 games. See you tomorrow. So yeah, that's something that's going to happen. So I don't play that much because that category hurts me because I think I'm a Goliath. But that format helps me when I think I'm a David. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it'd be fun if they had like dead ball tournaments in like lower levels. Like, how many dead ball cap tournaments are there right now? 1, 2?
I think there's only one. And it's not a cap tournament. It's the silver, daily late silver. In the last tournament cycle, we had the low diamond cap was a dead ball cap. Oh, we loved it. All sorts of nonsense happened, except for pitchers where we all played Dave McNally, Luis Tiant, Harvey Haddix, and Silver Robin Roberts.
That happened.
Pitchers are all the same.
But it'd be fun to have something like a gold or below, kind of open dead ball tournament where a lot of the newer players that have a lot of lower level cards can play that dead ball atmosphere. Because I like the dead ball atmosphere. I like going with 3 pitchers and
yeah, I know, right? I mean, how often do you look at your players' base running ratings?
Yeah.
In dead ball, you need base running. You don't mean on modern eras. It's not important.
And you don't need a Jeff Mathis in the dead ball
Not at all. Catchers suck. Your catcher is a batter. Bring a batting platoon as your catcher.
Use Mike Piazza, as your batter.
Although in low diamond cap, I use Jason Kendall and Deacon. Who was he? It's not Deacon Philippe. The other catcher named Deacon something.
Oh, Deacon White, is it?
Deacon White, yes. Great catching platoon. Yeah. So both can hit, they both can run, and they can't catch a lick, but it's dead ball, so they don't have to.